my background, I was born in Melbourne, Australia, in '72. Moved to Queensland when I was 7 with my birth parents, and by the age of 15 had moved 11 times. So that's including the move from Melbourne to Queensland. Moved 11 times. Started work when I was 13, delivering pamphlet deliveries, and I used to work at the local chicken shop and also the local video shop. By the age of 15, my parents decided that they wanted to move, and they moved. I come home one day after working in a factory, rode my bike home, found boxes everywhere around the back patio, and said, "What's going on here?" And they said, "We're moving." And I'm like, "Oh, where are we moving to?" And they went, "No, we're moving, you're staying. We don't care what you're going to do, but we're moving out." And they were moving, it was like, I don't know, 100 k's away or something like that. So for me to actually, if I did move with them, it would have taken me like leaving at 1 o'clock in the morning on the push bike to be at the factory at 6 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, so they up and left me there with about 2.5 weeks rent left on the property. A friend of mine that I was working with at the time had come past one night and said, "Do you want to go for a drive?" So as we do as teenagers, drive around. He just got his license and we drove around for a little while, and he just asked me, say going home, "Do you want to crash at my house tonight?" And I went, "Oh, I don't want to be a pain to your mum and that." He said, "No, I've got a spare bed." So I stayed that night. I stayed the next night, and I left 7.5 years later. So yeah, one night stay, and I stayed there for a while. And to this day, his mum and dad, my mum and dad, I call them mum and dad, and he's my brother. He is. He's been there through thick and thin. I've been there for him. His kids call me their uncle. They even turned up last weekend to a baseball game I was playing at the time. Yes, I play baseball still at the age of 42. Try to keep fit, and it was good. They rocked up and I got to see them. The struggles I had as a kid were, not only never being able to stay in the same place, for a long period of time, I always wished I had friends. I always heard people say, "Oh, I've had this friend since in kindergarten and everything." We moved that much, and I could never understand why we moved. And then I found out years later, they always moved because they owed money to someone, or they'd outstayed their stay wherever we were living, and it involved a lot of alcohol. From the age of 13, I was paying part of the rent at times, and but I could never understand why I was paying for it. And they always had 2 fridges of alcohol. You had the fridge in the kitchen, which obviously would have some food, but it also had, underneath all filled with alcohol, and the beer fridge in the garage was always filled with alcohol, and the cupboard and a half full of cigarettes, because I'd always buy cigarettes in cartons, and I even had to go down and buy them. So we were always owing money to shops. I was getting told as a kid, if someone knocks on the door, tell them this, tell them that. Had to lie as a kid when stuff was coming. People would ask me certain things, and wonder why, as I was getting older, when I was getting my teens, I'd lie about stuff. I'd get called out all the time, and they're like, "Why do you do that?" And I went, "I don't know." And then I looked back years later and realised it's because that's what I was brought up to do. Lie about stuff. Everything was, don't let them believe what was going on. We always used to have people coming over and staying on the weekends. I gave up my bed quite a few times to have someone staying at, and I'd go sleep on the couch or stay at a friend's house, or pitch a tent out in the backyard and sleep in the backyard. A lot of the times, there'd be a lot of arguments and drunken arguments, and I would just sort of hop on the push bike and go sleep in the park for the night, or under the bridge and that. It wasn't the greatest, but I did what I can with what I had. So they left us when I was 15, and I stayed at, who I call mum and dad now, And I thank them for that. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be or who I'd be right now. At the same time, I had, when I used to sleep under the bridge and in the park and that, there were times I'd stay with another friend of mine I'd met in between our school holidays, who lived in the local caravan park, and a few times I'd stayed there. There's one night I got kicked out on a Thursday night, and I stayed there till the following Tuesday and went home Tuesday night, and all I got was, well, there's food in the fridge, I'm going to bed. No, where have you been or what's been going on. They didn't, my birth parents didn't know this family. This family knew of my birth parents, and that's why they let me stay there many times, because they knew what it was like. And so this friend and his brothers and that I grew up with as well. We were supposed to, Christmas when we were 19, we were supposed to drive up to far north Queensland with a friend of ours' sister to pick up her car and drive back with a spare motor, and we were going to work on it. And they were leaving Boxing Day morning. Well, it was back before we had mobiles, and I had slept in. So I missed, and they had left, and apparently they drove past home, but I wasn't there. But I was asleep, and I didn't hear them. I slept like a log. And then on the 27th of December, I was with another mate that couldn't go either, and trying to contact this third mate, and Chris rocked up, and he's a very pale fellow, and his face was all red, and I said, what's wrong? And he said, there's been an accident. And he mentioned that one of our friends had been killed in that accident. I said, no, that's not true. They're going to be here in a couple of hours, well, that's why we're getting ready to go over there. And he said, no. And coming from I'd gone through not being able to trust people and love people as much, and then this family took me in, and I was able to learn to start to trust and love people. And I didn't have friends from my childhood, but these guys were my friends, and the one that was killed he was the nicest guy. Look, all my mates were great guys, but Chips, we named him, he just always had a smile on his face. We had an accident years earlier, and he cracked both kneecaps, and he's always, on his crutches, and he'd always be smiling, and I'm just like, man, how do you do that? And I was always, fun and crazy, but I was also angry as well. So he had that just even level. It was fantastic. So that was a major loss. I struggled for quite a few years, not knowing what life was about, when, the best person, the nicest person out of all, was taken from us. Why not take me? Why not, a lot of these criminals and stuff. I was like, what's the point in life, really? Nowadays, I can look back on it, and I know that the meaning of life really is be the best you can be. You're here. Why not just do what you can? There was quite a few struggles, even when I moved in with my family now. The first couple of years weren't easy. I was quite rebellious, argumentative, and always thought I knew what was right, but I was always rebelling because that's what I did at home. I'd gone from a family who didn't care who I was and where I was from and what I was doing, to a family that loved me and made sure I was at work on time, and had my socks and jocks all ironed. Mum would still do it now if I ever went back home, which will never happen. But so if something were to happen to them tomorrow, it would devastate me. They are my family. I'm lucky that I'm able to be able to choose my family. They say you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. Well, I'm a perfect example that you can. Your family should be who you decide to have, within your life, and it's there for you and guides you and helps you when you need to and stuff. Yeah, you're always going to have your ups and downs, but they're there to love and care for you. And then, I moved away for a few years, moved down to Melbourne, back down to Melbourne, and found myself. I did a lot of travel overseas, America, UK, Wales, Amsterdam, even a bit around Australia sort of thing. And I started to find myself, started to get an understanding. I had a lot of relationships in that time, and a lot of them failed. And I will take, 65 to 70% responsibility for them failing, because I was always not letting people in. I was always pushing them away. I was afraid to care about someone because I was afraid I was going to lose them, or I wasn't going to be good enough for them and that. So, but I had more female friends than male friends over the years, and I'm still, and not for the reasons a lot of people think, I'm still friends with a lot of the people that I've dated over the years. I've even been to a few of their marriages and seen a couple of them have kids and stuff like that sort of thing, and there's no weirdness or anything about that between us and them. And my partner, Ange, she's very understanding. I told her that straight up front. I was very communicative with her and said, look, I've had a lot of issues in the past, and I've worked really hard to get through that. I think to be a successful coach, you need to, have done the work yourself, taken responsibility for your actions and so forth. So, I pushed a lot of people away. I destroyed a lot of relationships and that was all because I wasn't coping with it. I wasn't taking responsibility for it. One of the biggest lines, which is on the back of my business card, is the day you take responsibility for your actions is the day that you move from childhood to adulthood. And I could not agree with that more. There's a lot of men that they let their egos get in the way, and they just won't admit it. And I tell you now, guys, if you listening to that now, step up, put your ego aside, and just I work a lot with females these days because I do understand from a male's point of view and a female's point of view, because I've had plenty of relationships, so I know what they were thinking after I've discussed it with them, and through female friends and everything else sort of things. So that's got me to where I am today. I studied 8 years ago at the Coaching Institute of Melbourne, and I'd been coaching people for years unofficially, where I'd say, well, I think you should do this or do that, and they would do it. They'd always come to me. I don't know why, but they'd always come to me and go, Jay, how do you seem to go out with that person, or how did you get that job? You always seem to go and get what you want. And I'm like, well, I look at it this way, and then I found coaching, and I studied it and understood that coaching's not about telling you what to do and how to do it, but it's about getting an understanding of who that person is, how they think, how they see things, how they do things, and then guiding them with what they have within them. I don't sit there and go, well, you should do this and you should do that, because that's not how coaching should work. It's about guiding you to the answers, exploring with you, sitting down with you and getting an understanding. I love that, and I think, I look back on my life and, I could sit there and say, well, my life was rubbish because of the way I was brought up. No, I had to, I worked from a young age. I did what I can to get by. I was so lucky and blessed, and, maybe because I was, a good egg and just in a bad surroundings, that I was taken in by such a wonderful family, and I love them. I would do anything for them, and I do. I'm always checking in with them and seeing how they are and stuff. My birth family I haven't had anything to do with for quite a long time. I do know where some of them are, and have seen the life that saw one a while ago. Hadn't changed. Wouldn't take responsibility, blaming everyone else and everything else, and that is the reason why I don't have connections with them anymore. My family are who I have now, who I have around you, and I think all families should be about the people that encourage you, support you, and guide you. Why is it a complete stranger out here can, or even yourself, can have a, treat me with the respect and talk to me in a calming and a beautiful way, and want to help, where people that are supposed to be blood related and love you and that will treat you with such disrespect, talk down to you, and throw things in your face from 25 years ago. I mean, bring stuff up when you're a 10-year-old kid. I mean, hello, I was a 10-year-old kid. And it amazes me that, you know, I've worked with clients who have that. You know, their biggest struggle is, you know, my family does this, or my brother, or my cousin, or my mother, and I'm like, that was when you were a child. So as a coach, you know, I get to know you now, and I work on you from now, because that's what it's about. You know, people who meet me now think, you know, what a wonderful person and that. I've got friends that know me from a kid, and they sort of say, well, I used to do this and you do that, but you don't do it now. And I'm like, no, because I'm not that person anymore. There is still my core, there is still my truth inside of me. And I always say, stick to your the real you. You know, stick to the truth of who you are. You really need to, you know, admit where things are working and not working and make a difference. And that's what I've done, and that's the reason why I've got into coaching. So, I love it. Changing people's lives, getting people to do things they've never been able to think they could possibly do. You know, they get promotions, they meet their love of their lives, and it goes so well. You know, they communicate better, they get an understanding of what it's all about. They get up in the morning and they're happy. You know, we're here. If we're going to live our life miserable, why stay here? So, yeah, I do it. Look where I live. It's a fantastic place on the water. You know, I get to travel around, see people all around the world, coach people all around the world. That's, you know, I'm very lucky, and obviously, you know, Chips is up there looking down over me, and my nana and uncle as well, who've always guided me when I was very young. So, yeah.